What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, my name is Beth and I make all kinds of motherhood and lifestyle videos here on YouTube. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking all about toddler speech. But toddler speech begins much earlier than when they actually hit the toddler phase. So I'm going to be talking about language development basically in the first year and beyond. Now, the first thing that I need you guys to know is that I am not making this video from a place of having any particular expertise or even credentials on this topic. The reason that I am making it is because it's a video that has been highly requested by you guys. I have a 21-month-old who is an excellent communicator and she has been talking since she was 12 months old. So I've gotten a lot of messages from you guys just wanting to hear about some of the things that we have done to help encourage that. By 12 months old, our daughter had about 13 words that she was consistently using properly in her communication with us. And then around 16 months old, she started using 2-word combinations. So things like bye dog or hi mama. Around 18 or 19 months old, that switched to 3-word combinations, and now at 21 months old, she is speaking in 3 to 6 word sentences most of the time. For example, we were on a long drive home the other day and she was kind of mumbling in the back seat, and so I said to her, "Vivian, what's wrong?" And she said, "Take shoes off for the drive." So I think that kind of shocked me a little bit, but at this point, the time where she wasn't able to communicate her needs with us feels like a lifetime ago, and it honestly makes life so much easier for all of us. Now, I think it is extremely important to say that there is a big variation of normal when it comes to infant and toddler speech development and progression. And so please don't watch this video from a place of comparison because that's not helpful to you or your toddler. I'm simply in this video going to be sharing with you guys some of the techniques that I used over the first year of her life and beyond to encourage language development because it's something that you guys want to see. So the first thing that I'll note is that most of the language development that we have done with our daughter has really come through play. So we're not really forcing lessons at this age. We're not sitting her down and trying to have her communicate things with us or doing schoolwork or any of that type of thing. We're really just focusing on teaching her new words and expanding her vocabulary through the play that she's already doing. Now, the types of toys that you use can really influence this. Your toys do not need to be aesthetic. You can even use things around the house when it comes to language development, but what we want to focus on is open-ended play and open-ended toys, not necessarily the toys that are always speaking to your toddler or speaking for your toddler or just simply entertaining them as they are. What we really want to see is them have the opportunity to get into that open-ended play because they'll be more imaginative, it will encourage critical thinking skills, and obviously provide a lot of fun opportunities for language development as well. So a great example of an open-ended toy that you can use with your infant or your toddler is blocks. While you're playing with blocks, there are so many great opportunities for you to model speech to your toddler. So as you're stacking them, you can say things like up, 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 and then when you knock them down or they naturally fall down, you can say things like uh-oh, fell down, or things like boom, or all of these different types of words that narrate what's happening. Another great example of language through play are animals. You can practice animal sounds, which a lot of people don't realize actually counts as a word as well. While you are playing, there's also a few ways that you can change the way that you are explaining things to make it more likely for your toddler to actually grasp that thing. An example of this is when you are describing something, if you use the adjective before the actual word that you're trying to explain. For some reason, studies have shown it's not as helpful as actually saying the adjective after the word. So an example of this is saying green ball. For whatever reason, again, studies have shown that it's more helpful for you to say the ball is green. So that's just something that I've done with my toddler, is try to have that adjective after the object. And then another thing I've tried to do less of is quizzing. So I think a lot of us want to see where our toddler is at, and so oftentimes we're like, what's this? Or say this, because we want to see them actually do those things and see if they have that skill yet. But that can put a lot of pressure on toddlers and make them feel this expectation to do what we want them to do. And so another way that you can encourage them to actually try filling in a blank is saying something like that's a, when you point to something, instead of saying what's this. So if you're pointing at a picture of an apple, for example, you could say that's a, and give them an opportunity to fill that in by saying apple instead of saying what's this, say apple. And then if she actually answers in the time that I leave a pause, amazing. If she doesn't, I'll fill in the blank for her. Remember that the purpose of play is for your toddler to have fun, and that is how they learn. So instead, again, of making it a lesson all the time, use play as an opportunity to model new words, new sounds, new gestures, and to use a lot of repetition as well. My next tip is especially important when you're first starting with language development, but also very important with toddlers, and it's to focus on functional language. So functional language are all of the things that help your toddler actually communicate their needs, their wants, the way that they're feeling, versus things like colors and shapes and the things that are really really fun to teach our toddler and the things that we often feel like are the ones they need to know, but they're not as helpful in day-to-day communication. It is way more helpful for your toddler to be able to communicate if they are still hungry, if they are thirsty, if they're all done eating, if they need a diaper change, versus them communicating whether or not they can count to 10. So we first started teaching functional language and communication, I would say around 6 months with the introduction of infant sign language. So we would often use the sign more to communicate whether or not she was still hungry, all done if she wanted to leave the table, and then the other one that we used really often was milk. You could obviously start infant sign language earlier, but I just found that around 6 months it made a lot of sense for us to do that. And then in addition to infant sign language, we were also pretty focused on having her learn gestures, because gestures are a starting place for words as well. So one of the first gestures that you can teach to your baby is clap, wave, blow a kiss, shaking their head yes or no. These are all different ways that you can encourage them to communicate with you, but also tie a word to that communication as well. My next tip is something that I did with our daughter since she was a newborn. It is something that I do with my son now, and it is to literally talk all day long and to narrate everything. I swear to you guys, I would sound like an insane person when there was no one else in the house, because I would be just talking like all day long, but it wasn't to myself, it was to my daughter, and I was communicating to her what we were doing, what was going on around us, and what she was seeing. When I did this, I wouldn't use baby words for things. I would still say them the way that I would actually say them, but I would kind of adjust my tone and the way that I was saying things to make her more likely to be receptive to it. So for example, I would use a really high-pitched tone, I would really exaggerate the words that I was saying, I would use a really slow speed, and I would also stop to show her how my mouth was moving a lot of the time as well. Honestly, think a Miss Rachel vibe, but like all day long. So a great example of a way that you can narrate what's going on is by giving a house tour. This is something that Love Every encourages in their guides, and I found it really helpful for us. So when she was a baby, we would walk around the house and I would go up to the window, for example, and instead of just pointing out the window and saying sun, or literally not even saying anything, because sometimes I feel like that's our default when we're tired, is to just be like, you don't understand or care about what's going on anyway, I would try and say something like sunny day or the sky is blue, and like really just use that over the top, high-pitched, exaggerated communication with her so that she would be picking up on the things that I was saying as well. You don't even just have to do this with like a sing-song Disney princess voice. You can literally sing songs. You can make up songs about everything. I made up the most ridiculous songs for things in that first year because I was just finding new ways to sing about the things that we were seeing, because music and song is a really great way to teach language as well. That's why preschools are always singing. It's why the shows that you often probably show to your toddler are full of music as well. Your toddler does not care if you can't sing. The reason that songs are so great is because it really slows language down. It gives children an opportunity to hear rhyme and repetition and develop more of an awareness of the way that like letters and words and sounds all work together. There are also like banks and banks of songs online. So if you're honestly just forgetting all the songs that you would have heard when you were a toddler, then do a quick Google search. I know that that's definitely something that I did when my daughter was born. Singing songs also provides a really great opportunity for your child to fill in the blanks. So I would say that around 18 months, when we started to see a lot of those sentence like combinations, I would honestly say that it came from a lot of fill in the blanks that we would do with songs. I think the fact that there is a melody attached to a song helps your child to remember the words that come next really well. So for example, we would use songs like Twinkle Twinkle, and again, I would give her an opportunity to fill in the blank. So I would say twinkle, twinkle little, and she would say star. And then from there, we would kind of build up as many words as we can. So that was a really great way that we could build on her vocabulary. And she didn't necessarily know and use all those words like functionally or properly yet, but it did give her an opportunity to practice pronunciation and just get exposure to more words overall. So the next thing that we did is honestly a topic that I want to camp out on a little bit, because it is, I would say, the most important thing that we have done with our daughter since she was a baby and especially now as a toddler, and that is reading aloud with her. As parents, because we are so busy, I think we can sometimes want to skip over this step with our children when they're young. I know for myself, a lot of the time when I get to a longer book, I don't want to sit down and read the whole thing. I want to skim past a couple pages or cherry pick a few of the words out of the sentences because she doesn't understand the whole plot of the story anyway. But I think we are honestly robbing our toddlers a little bit if we don't take the time to actually sit down and read them some of these longer books that have more language to them, because we think that they don't have the attention span, or we simply don't have the attention span ourselves to do that. Reading aloud with our kids is so important, not even just because it gives an opportunity for us to connect and bond with them over stories, but also because giving them an exposure to a variety of books is also going to help them develop their language as well. We can only repeat back the amount of words that we're actually exposed to. I know for myself, when I read a new book and I discover a new word, it's like, oh, I've never heard that word before. It's the same thing for your toddler. And so one of the things that I find is that people are often recommending books for different ages, like certain baby books for babies, and there's only 4 words in the whole book, and then we'll read those to our toddlers as well. But one of the things that I find with like board books or the books that we label as being for toddlers are that they're very limiting in terms of the language they're actually exposing our toddler to. And I'm not saying like let's throw out all of the board books, because I think that there's a bunch of them that are actually really incredible when it comes to language development, like The Very Hungry Caterpillar. That is an amazing book and I still read it to my daughter today. However, I do also look for opportunities to read those longer books to my children, even if it is beyond their comprehension, because that's a way that I'm able to enrich their language as well. I have a book that my mother-in-law, so Vivian's Nana, thrifted for us that's called The Treasure of Literature, and I wanted to read a quick passage out of the intro to it because it talks about the benefits of reading aloud, and I honestly could not say it better than this. Read to your children daily. Read with enthusiasm. Read in a manner that stimulates reflection, talk, and interaction. Reading aloud to children is part of every teacher's repertoire of absolute musts. Reading aloud also builds background knowledge. It can trigger conversations, reflections, and reading that is linked with real-life events enhance both the real and vicarious experiences. Sharing literature with children increases their vocabulary and their awareness of sentence structure and the sounds of language. Poems and stories are full of interesting ways to describe, to compare, and to contrast, and children subconsciously incorporate those models into their own thoughts and speech. Exposure to a variety of literary forms provides the listener with knowledge that he or she needs to understand literature. The benefits from reading aloud to children are deep and abiding. Lucky is the child with whom it is done frequently and well. I honestly just love that, and I think it is something that is so important that we have forgotten the art of, is just sitting down and reading aloud with our children. So one of the things that I will say is that it can definitely be really hard if you have a toddler that is active and doesn't have that attention span to sit and hear those longer stories. And so what I have done to kind of get around that is introduce read alouds over mealtime. So we definitely read the Bible over our breakfast meal time, but if we want to do more reading during that time or over lunchtime specifically, I'll actually go and handpick a number of books that I want to read that are a little bit longer, because it gives me an opportunity while she is eating to hold up a book, show her the pictures, really focus on having the characters come alive by using different voices, different sound effects for things, and it absolutely just makes her day. She totally lights up during those read alouds, and it's something that she'll request when we sit down at the table now, is a read aloud, and so I cannot recommend that enough. As I mentioned, I do try to incorporate books that would be kind of labeled as beyond her age or ability to comprehend at this point, and that's just something that I have found worked really well for us. So I want to show you a couple examples of what some of those books would be. So there is a whole series of books called The Story Orchestra. We absolutely love these books because the stories in them are really beautiful. A lot of them are based on classic stories. The illustrations are lovely, but they also incorporate music in a really beautiful way. These series all highlight a composer, and they'll basically use the music from that composer throughout the book. So there's a little button that your child can press to hear the song that goes with each of the pages. So we absolutely have loved these. Another author that I really like is Kate Messner. So she does Over and Under the Pond. I think another one called Down and Under the Dirt that we just grabbed. I find that her writing does a great job of incorporating words that we wouldn't hear in daily conversation. So things like a waterlogged tree. And I also love that it incorporates a lot of really colorful language about nature. Vivian really loves the Lola Dutch books. These are ones that we have come back to often because they're just fun. Again, the illustrations in these ones are really great, but they're also good at just introducing new words I found, and pauses and opportunities for her to fill in the blanks too. She can almost recite this book back to me now. Another example of a book or series of books that are great, especially if your toddler is sitting down for a while and you want to read out loud to them, are things by Beatrix Potter. So these are good, I find, because they are very like old classic English. You're not going to get a lot of writing like this anymore when it comes to children's books, but I think it's still good to get that exposure. And there are a lot of words in these books that we wouldn't use in everyday conversation, like exert or implored, but I love the fact that my toddler is getting exposure to them, and so Beatrix Potter is another great example of something that you could do for a read aloud. Because reading out loud has become so important in just like the culture of my relationship with my kids, I usually will do a seasonal book rotation. So we have books that are based on all of the seasons, like autumn, winter, spring, and I will rotate them out so that we have books that really connect to what's going on in the world around us in the playroom. On the note of books, I just want to mention this because they can be very expensive and it takes a lot of time to build up a library for your kids, and I felt felt that pressure, especially in the first year of her life when I literally just had the same books to read to her over and over again. But something that is very encouraging is that reading the same books over and over again to your children actually really does help with language development. It's the repetition that gives them an opportunity to hear that word in the same context repeatedly, and they are more likely to actually incorporate that into their own language if they are hearing it over and over again. So do not feel bad if you are feeling like you are just so tired of reading the same books over and over again. It probably is really helping, but also remember that the library is a really great resource and your toddler will probably love to go there. They'll pull all the books off the shelves, but you'll have a fun time doing it. Another thing that I did in the first year when it came to books was introducing books that were like first word based books. So these are not necessarily stories, but they do have pictures and help your child to get more exposure to different things that, again, they may not be seeing, and actually attach a word to them. So this is one of the most loved books that we own. It has been for both of our children. It is by Pretty Books. It is one of the first 100 words books that they have. It's lovely because this is small enough to fit in their hands and it provides a lot of opportunities for language. So there's yellow duckling in here, but that can be an opportunity to do an animal sound. Same kind of thing with all these different pictures here. And the reason that I love the Pretty Books is because they do use real pictures of things. We have another bigger one in Vivian's room, but she's napping right now, so I won't grab it. But it shows real images. So that is a Montessori kind of recommendation, is to use real images of things because, again, we want everything to be based in reality. And so that's very helpful when you're showing your baby or toddler different words that you want them to learn. But because we're not too tied to any one approach, there are also lots of other books that do the same thing. And we've really loved this Finding First Word books with both of our kids as well, because it's very fun to lift the flap, to see what's going on with all the pictures, and it's just been another fun way for us to just expose her to different words and have her practice repeating them as well. We have also used flashcards here and there, so we have a ring of flashcards that comes with us in the car and shows Vivian different pictures, and so she'll sit in the car seat and kind of go through and practice saying those words. One of the Love Every kits, I want to say this is the 5 or 6 month or the 7 or 8 month box, comes with a set of flashcards as well, so things like leaf, on the back there's moon, things like hat, but you could also do baby, banana, all of these different words that you can help to just practice doing with your toddler. I wouldn't say that we've particularly relied on flashcards when it has come to language development, but it is another great tool that we have used. Well, that is all the tips that I had to share with you guys. I hope that it was helpful for you and that you're able to get some ideas of ways that you can incorporate language development into your everyday interactions with your baby or your toddler. With everything in their development, whether it be their physical developmental milestones, their baby sleep, their relationship to food and when they start eating, and especially language development, we can't expect to just follow a prescriptive formula all the time and have it lead to the same output all the time. Every child is unique, and so my first recommendation would be to follow their lead. Really lean into their interests when it comes to books, into play, and as always, if you are genuinely concerned about where your toddler is at and they're not meeting the different recommendations outlined for them at the age that they are at, definitely mention that to your pediatrician, and remember that it's always an option to reach out to an expert if you want some more intervention or an evaluation as well. I will leave you with a couple of great resources to follow on Instagram, and that is Learn with Chatterboxes and Speech Sisters. They're really great at showing you different toys and ways that you could kind of incorporate language into that, so definitely check them out. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I would love if you could give it a like before you head out today, and consider subscribing to my channel if you don't want to miss out on more content like this. But until my next video, I love you guys, I'm praying for you guys, and I will see you soon.